All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Oh, thank you. It's such a pleasure to return. Thank you. There is no crowd. Oh, please, people. Please. There is nothing like the warmth of a recorded audience to make me feel wanted around the holidays. And there is no group that I would rather spend time with as we review the hellscape that is America and the earth and the human species bent on its own destruction. We will review the weekend with you that was filled with horror, frankly. The shocking news out of Hollywood that in itself is horrifying. The broader issues that are no longer even implicit, I think explicitly laid out in some of what's going on worldwide when it comes to anti-Semitism. And it's a sad state of affairs on one level. However, it's not all a sad show. First of all, 3 of my favorite guests will be here today.
What?
I know. Gary Dietrich with the raw politics of things. That's bottom of this first hour. Also coming up, Oyer lawyer is here, everyone. That's right, Liz Oyer, the pardon attorney, who has been so wonderfully outspoken and I think so wonderfully elucidative, if I can use that word. I like to throw, yes, it's my holiday ding word. Just shedding a lot of light on the pardon process and how it has been completely perverted by this administration. I mean, it is so perverted to the point that you'd like to see the power of the pardon reversed or modified. But I'll discuss with Liz why you might like to see that. That will never happen. There is no incoming administration that would then roll back their own ability to produce pardons. The fiat, the utter caprice, the impulsive crap that goes into these Donald Trump pardons is embarrassing and in itself a comment on how far we've fallen. Overruling his own Justice Department working hard to bring some of these cases to bear, some of these convictions to the finish line, and then he just pardons it. He just issues a pardon. So we'll get into that with Liz Oyer, but we'll also discuss the real, I think, broader issue that kind of overhangs everything in America, and that is, can you put Humpty Dumpty back together again? I don't think you can, but I don't think you should stop trying. And I feel as though whatever pieces you can put together, just as we've seen whatever bits of damage have been done by the administration that you can handle in the courts, for example, or that you can modify or soften maybe through the courts, you must do it. You're compelled to do it. So we'll talk to Liz about that. And then, of course, Sarah Kendzior joins us, top of the next hour. She's brilliant. She is blunt. And she is truly a gift to this show. She joins us every Monday. So thank you for being here. Tony, I've missed you.
Thanks, Tony.
And Kim, I've missed you as well. It's nice.
Kim, how are you?
Nice to see you both.
Did you miss Lucy?
Lucy, my favorite McAllister, is rocking early. Big shout out to Lucy McAllister. We are a crowdfunded show. I won't go into all the details, but I'll just tell you that much of the ad revenue associated with YouTube shows has been drained, has been reallocated, I guess, might be a way to say it. So all I'm trying to mention to you is if you support independent media of any kind, do support it, continue to support it, because it likely needs your support, and we fall into that category. So I make a big deal out of the part of the crowd that funds us. And again, we're generally fueled by Patreon and PayPal. And so if you're part of that crowd, wow, you rock it. Thank you so very much. And for those of you who throw in on super stickers and super chats, that's a great way to support this show, because no matter what happens with ad revenue, we get to keep those things associated with super chat and super stickers. So thank you for that as well. I'm sick over the Reiner murders, says Delette. The New Zealand murders and the murders at Brown University. I think it was Australia, but your point's taken. Mm-hmm. What the F? Let's start with the Reiner stuff, because I think it's just a little shocking, and it's bizarre, and yet I think I hate to say it in this kind of bouillabaisse of tragedy that we say, well, we'll start with this tragic story, but there they are, the Reiners, Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle. And by all accounts, he was a wonderful man. I mean, with a heart in the right place, politically active, created and directed some of the most memorable films in history, in the history of cinema. I guess that's the Billy Crystal, Meg Ryan, Rob Reiner group shot from When Harry Met Sally. And his, I don't mean to make this about, you have a choice here. You can make this about, his legacy and about who he was and what he was and who she was and what she was. And I think on some level we'll do that in the short time we have. But also the bizarre nature of this. I mean, you can't ignore that. There's Rob Reiner as a director. You'll remember he probably never needed to work again after the fame and success he achieved on All in the Family. But then he went, and there he is with Carol O'Connor. I mean, this show was #1, All in the Family, by a lot. Yep. And it took on serious societal issues, cultural issues, and it was funny as hell. And Rob Reiner was a key part of it. It was a small cast. But he went on, as I say, to direct all of these wonderful films. I mean,
that's from Stand By Me. Is that Stand By Me?
Yeah, Stand By Me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And those actors in Stand By Me, of course, they went on to their own careers. But his, he wasn't limited that way. He didn't Rob Reiner, I mean, his list of, he did Misery, you'll remember. Mm-hmm. A Few Good Men. That was the Aaron Sorkin script, but he directed it. The Princess Bride, massive movie. And I mean, think about these films.
Yeah.
This is Spinal Tap.
And he wasn't done. I mean, he was still making movie magic. He wasn't, his career has been cut short. Even at, was he 78? He was still working and still creative and still making a mark.
He just had done the sequel to Spinal Tap. Mm-hmm. Just finished that. He'd done a whole promotion tour on the talk shows. You probably saw him if you watch any late night talk shows. And he did another movie called The American President. And that was a movie I was in.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the first film that I was cast in when I arrived in Los Angeles. And the reason I mention it is it was a really big deal to me, because it wasn't just like reporter #2 or anchor #1. The character had a name. And the only reason I know that was important is because Jane Jenkins, who cast the film with Rob, told me, this is a big deal that you have a named character. And I had, and she said, and you have a scene with a principal. And again, I just kind of was getting to know what all these terms meant.
Yeah.
And I had a scene with Richard Dreyfuss. So it was very exciting to me.
Did you get to meet Rob Reiner?
Well, of course, Rob Reiner is directing.
Yeah.
So Rob Reiner is, but listen, I don't want to mischaracterize it. I was no friend of Rob Reiner. Didn't know him well, but I knew his work. And then later I went on to create a show, an animated show called The Agent. And it was, we did a pilot, and the lead character, the agent, was voiced by Rob Reiner.
Oh.
And what I remember from the table read was that he had to get up at one point to take a call from Al Gore. He was a very active Democrat. He was in the Democratic Party in an active way. And I feel as though Rob Reiner was involved in righteous causes. But here is the tragedy of family. His son battled addiction. They did a movie together about the battle that his son was enduring and going through. And clearly, I mean, I don't know, this is now speculation, but I'm guessing that his son on and off medication, may have been off medication on this night in Brentwood where he takes the life of his mother and father. I mean, it's positively stupefying. I mean, you just don't know what. There it is, Being Charlie. Thank you, Tony. That was the name of the film that was really about addiction and about a father-son relationship that was torn to pieces by addiction. And at the end of the movie, there was real question the two of them had as to, how to end it, because, it's not always the happiest ending. And they did end it with sort of a rapprochement, the two get back together and there's a warming of relations. It's not clear that that was the way the Rob Reiner and Nick Reiner relationship actually ended, although Reiner himself said that and I think Nick made the point as well, they became closer through the process and that they did actually get closer. But, things that we know, apparently it's likely the daughter found them and made this call to police, and then Nick now is in custody. He is likely charged with murder, a double murder, and his mother Michelle and his father Rob are losses that this community feels very deeply. It's devastating. As Kim says, these are, vital, vibrant, continuing, productive members of the community. And so this is a crime of violence that's so horrifying that adds to the tragedy, What else do we know, Kim? Anything?
I think it's important to note, and I love that you made it about Rob Reiner, but I know a lot of people are talking, especially in the chat, about the president's response to the deaths of a man and his wife who have made a mark on American culture, right? This is a death, whether you loved him from All in the Family or whether you loved his movies or whatever it is, who has fans and who has people who, will be saddened by the news of his death. And instead of coming out and saying something simple but comforting, like, we're saddened to hear of the deaths of the Reiner family, whatever. He didn't say that. He said something really ugly because of Rob Reiner's politics.
So I'll read this off the screen with all of you. So it means I have to make the screen bigger if I freeze or do if I drop out or something because of some internet thing. Kim will pick it up. A very sad thing. This is from Donald Trump. A very sad thing happened last night in Hollywood. Rob Reiner, a tortured and struggling but once very talented movie director and comedy star, has passed away, together with his wife Michelle, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as, and this is in capital letters, Trump derangement syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS. He was known to have driven people crazy, in capital letters, by his raging obsession of I'm reading it even though it's not grammatically correct. I'm reading it the way he wrote it. Driven people crazy by his raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump, with his obvious paranoia reaching new heights as the Trump administration surpassed all goals and expectations of greatness, and with the golden age of America upon us, perhaps like never before. May Rob and Michelle rest in peace! Exclamation point.
What was that? I mean, what is that?
That's insanity to me. I mean, you can see Trump is losing it. right? He's an obsessed older man. I mean, I hate to say old man because there's so many people who are old who are vibrant, clear thinkers. So somehow, like, I don't mean to suggest that being old is at all an infirmity, but I mean, in the classic sort of parodied way that, you know, an old man sits there in the White House and it's 3 a.m. and he just punches out these hateful screeds. That's what he is. And it's, to what end? To what end? I mean, is that to own the libs? Does that really land with MAGA people to own the libs? I don't know. It just is it's a sad coda to the whole thing. But believe it or not, I got to move on. I've got other tragedy in the world that I want to touch on, and I'm so saddened by this crime of violence, clearly a crime and horror perpetrated by someone who literally was insane, brought on by some chemical imbalance, perhaps mentally, some cerebral issue. I mean, I don't know what was going on with Nick Reiner, but I know that this is a horrifying event, and it's not one perpetrated by someone in their right mind. And the last thing I'll say is that, you know, when you use a knife in this way, it's clearly a crime filled with emotion, you know. They talk about crimes of passion. This is that. And so you can see that whatever derangement he had, whatever illness he had, mental illness, it was fueling a rage in him, right? I mean, again, and you say, oh, Mark, you don't have all the information. How can you say it? Guys, come on. I mean, certain things seem self-evident. And so that makes it all worse somehow. It does. I can't imagine coming on a scene in her home where she finds her mother and father that way, their daughter. The whole thing is profoundly sad. So that is that when it comes to this situation in Hollywood. Obviously, if we have any more details, we'll let you know what they are. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
I wish I had better news to move on to, but actually the biggest story worldwide, I think, in terms of hate crimes and tragedy, is this mass shooting. Killed at least 11 at that Bondi Beach in Australia. The Jews in Australia already suffering from 2 years of unprecedented anti-Semitism. And so many gathered on this beach, and it was a celebration of the start of Hanukkah. And the result is this horror. And Kim, we have some video, I believe, in all of this. There's a remarkable story within the story. But this is the first time that gun violence in Australia is not common the way it is here, as you know. It comes after this major report, and this is the first gun violence turned on Jews in Australia, but it comes after this major report that was just issued, documenting a rise in anti-Semitic events in Australia in the last 2 years. And so the story within the story is that there were acts of heroism. There was one very high-profile act of heroism in all of this, even as a father and his son were the perpetrators of this horror in Australia. I think the father's in his 50s, or he's 53, I think, and the son is 24, I don't know, something like that. And they are just shooting at all of these celebrants, of all of these observers. Tony's showing you a still of, this is true heroism. A guy disarming one of these perpetrators. Actually, I think it's the younger guy.
His name is Ahmad Al-Ahmed. He is a 43-year-old owner of a fruit shop nearby. He's a bystander to all of this, and he took the gun off of the perpetrator, according to officials, at great risk to himself, suffered serious injury as a result of that, had to go to the hospital, be operated on. But a relative of Ahmed told Australian TV news service that he was shot twice during this incident, and that he would not hesitate to step in to stop death and suffering.
Wow.
So there he is, disarming one of the gunmen.
Extraordinary. Really extraordinary. At least 16 people, apparently, including one of the alleged gunmen, died at the shooting in Sydney. They were 10 years old to 87 years old. And some of the stories within the stories beyond the heroism that Kim has just described, remarkable. I mean, I think there was a Holocaust survivor who was killed. I mean, imagine being a Holocaust survivor. You're now the victim of more anti-Semitic violence, Jew haters opening fire on a Hanukkah celebration. He threw himself over his wife to protect her, and that's how he died. It's a remarkable thing. The couple, both Holocaust survivors, and they faced the unspeakable terror of the Holocaust, of the Nazis, dreadful conditions in Siberia he survived. He, along with his mother and younger brother, struggled for survival. The notion that they could seek a brighter future out of that. They moved to Australia from Ukraine, and now he's dead.
Tony, can we show the picture of Matilda? Matilda was 10 years old. 10 years old. And she was on the beach celebrating Hanukkah with her family. I mean, yeah. I don't even, it's just the saddest thing. She was called bright and joyful and spirited, and a child who brought light to everyone around her. I mean, you have a Holocaust survivor, you have a 10-year-old child. It's just the senselessness of hate. Yeah.
It's deliberate. It's anti-Semitic. It's Jew-hating on a level we've never seen before in Australia, with a kind of targeted violence. It's the deadliest mass shooting in Australia since 1996. The entire incident raises questions about the radicalization around anti-Semitism, around Jew-hating. And you can look at Australia and go, well, they have strict gun laws. And there's already talk in Australia about changing these gun laws, making them more intense. But I mean, I think what provokes even greater discussion is, why do we still have these targeted moments of Jew hating and Jew killing members of the Jewish community during these moments and celebrations meant for joy? It is endemic. And of course, it's been supercharged by the Gaza situation. The Gaza situation kind of gave license to a lot of these people who I think are looking for an excuse to hate on Jews. And so this community that, has suffered since the beginning of time with pogroms and with ethnic cleansing and with, everything that defines the kind of persecution that they have been used to. This community has thrived in pockets and across the world, but has always had to worry about this, about violence that has spiked in the last 2 years worldwide. And in Australia, where these gun laws are so much tougher, these gunmen find a way to turn guns on the Jewish community.
And still, unlike America, the Australian Prime Minister is promising tougher gun laws after this shooting. So at least there's that, that here in America, if someone opens fire on a school, like we had a shooting at Brown University. You hear anything about tougher gun laws? You hear nothing. You hear nothing about doing something about the problem.
Well, as I said to you years ago on this show, once Sandy Hook happened and there were no additional gun laws, I knew that this country would never have any sort of gun laws. It was the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan and his chief of staff that produced some gun legislation that was then allowed to lapse. But after Sandy Hook, if you can kill elementary school students on that level and still not produce any action, that is a country that is completely held hostage by the fetishized nature of guns, the relationship, if you will, the cultural relationship we have with guns, and you can say the NRA, the political heft of the NRA, or just the political essence associated with guns and gun ownership, meaning you don't need the NRA anymore. It's sort of baked in that if you do anything toward gun legislation or restriction, it's going to cost you politically. So, and by the way, just as a note, because I think really the story here is one of Jew hating, because that's what this is. A Jewish family in San Bernardino County, victims of hate crime by 3 suspects who opened fire on their home. This just happened last night. I believe it was last night, actually. It might have been 2 nights ago. 8 o'clock at night, the father and his son about to leave, and apparently 3 suspects, 2 women and a man, in a 4-door sedan come by and were yelling, "Free Palestine." Then they used the N-word and then opened fire. The father and son got into their car, drove away, but moments later, the family's home surveillance cameras captured the vehicle returning, firing more than 20 rounds from what was likely, according to investigators, an airsoft gun. So what is that, like is that a BB gun, or is that an airsoft gun Tony, I feel like you're the closest thing to
it's kind of like a BB gun. It shoots. Okay. It's just kind of like a BB, but a little different. But essentially, yeah.
I mean, again, this is intimidation and a horrifying rise of anti-Semitic violence.
Well, the family had Hanukkah decorations up outside of their home.
Right.
And so now what you have, according to another article, is New York, Los Angeles law enforcement all on alert after this Australian mass shooting at Bondi Beach during a Hanukkah celebration. And now you have people, I would imagine, that are scared to have decorations in front of their home.
Of course.
That are frightened to show their religion to anyone or celebrate in any way. Don't go to Hanukkah celebrations that are public, right?
But what I was reading was that one of the aspects of Hanukkah celebrations is that you show your menorah in the window. Like that's apparently something that is very much part of the Jewish tradition around Hanukkah. It's a festival of lights. So in a way, the idea is to, be if you will, showing that we are a home that celebrates this holiday. But as you say, I mean, now you'd be scared. And isn't that the idea?
I think I would be scared, given everything that's going on.
Yeah. All right, we continue.
Temples have to hire security guards now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, no. I mean, the Jewish community is definitely a community that that is facing some renewed challenges. But as I was saying before, they're a community that has faced challenges, it seems, since the beginning of time. So, all right. We continue.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It is great to be back. One of the things that I have looked forward to all weekend is talking to this guy. He is the political ninja who is the political analyst at iHeartRadio, also across the CBS television stations. He's our former colleague at KGO Radio. How about it for the wonderful Gary Dietrich, everyone?
Well, good morning, Mark, on a very sobering Monday for all the reasons I know you and Kim have already been talking about and more. It's these things are always difficult, but during a holiday season when Jews, Christians, others are celebrating their highest of holy days, it is particularly tragic.
Yeah, I think that's so very true. I mean, you sort of hope that the spirit of the holiday season is bringing a brotherhood, a fraternity, a sense of oneness to the world. Those are the ideals, I think, that are embodied in the holiday season. And yet this reminds us that, sadly, it's a complicated world, and it's filled with those who are bent on tearing it to pieces. And so I want to ask you, and I'm going to get to Brown University in a second, I want to ask you something that is a little more, maybe overlaps a bit with that which you're so good at, which is, I think, dissecting and understanding the body politic. And in this case, I'm going to extend it to the world. So this may be, a big ask. But I feel, and I was just noting that in the time since the Gaza thing started, the world of anti-Semitism and violence against the Jewish community has been animated in a way that we really just haven't seen in many decades. And all the statistics bear that out. The Gaza thing became the hook on which many Jew haters could hang their Jew hating and try to justify it and wash it somehow in a righteousness. I wonder if you can help me figure if that's just the state of things, or if we can get back to some kind of reasonable conversation that brings us some tranquility.
Yeah, Mark, that's a good and in some ways profound question. Let me answer that on a couple levels real quickly, if I can. First off, I don't think there's any doubting exactly what you say, and that is that the Gaza situation was a new trigger point. It happened on college campuses. It happened all over social media. It happened on the mainstream media. It happened all over the world. And that's the point I sort of want to get to first, is that the modern media, particularly social media, right, now sort of creates the sad ability for what would have been seen as sort of a regional crisis to a global crisis, and one in which everybody not only has an opinion, but sadly can organize and orchestrate nefarious activities related to that news. Does that make any sense? It doesn't just happen in Israel or in Gaza. It isn't just on your nightly news as in the past, once at 6 o'clock, maybe at 11. It's 24/7. And so that does give rise to the opportunity for all kinds of craziness to ensue. You use the word Jew hating. Some people would just go, it's an opportunity for people to vent about what they perceive to be Zionist activities, that, America's, sort of favored nation status with Israel in the Middle East. I mean, there's so many different aspects to it, right? And I think that is true. The crazy part of it to me is what you and Kim were just talking about, that it gets down to decorations of somebody's home in a Los Angeles region, right? That's the part of it now, I think, that has become in many ways the most deeply concerning. If it's a regional crisis or a nation state conflict, people sort of say, okay, well, those have been going on for thousands of years. But the attacks on innocent people on a beach in Australia, on a home and neighborhood in the LA region, that's the part of it that I think in some ways, Mark, maybe raises it to a new level.
Yeah, those are such good points. The notion that a community of any kind has to go underground or has to be careful about talking about or showing the way they observe or that they observe. And, it's funny, after, you may recall, I'm sure you do recall it, the Iranian Revolution, and then the students, as they were called, who took over the embassy, and the hostage crisis, and the sentiment of America, of course, turning very much against Iran, the Iranian community in America felt very, in an instant, sort of persecuted, that is, or threatened, might be a better word. And I remember that, and it took a long time to get over. I mean, the hostage crisis went on a long time, but I'm just saying the after effects really took a long time to fade as well. This one just is one of those persistent generational type conflicts and issues and prejudices that, you know, is formed by a kind of bigotry that just doesn't seem to, it seems unrelenting, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, I went recently and saw Nuremberg, the new movie that, you know, Russell Crowe stars in, that is amazingly graphic in some ways, if people have seen it, and amazingly poignant about one of the apexes in history of this. But I think what I'm hearing from you, Mark, is sort of, it just doesn't seem to fade. I mean, it does, it goes sort of in cycles, right? And you're right, other people groups have been singled out more recently. People are talking about the Somali people, right? All of them are not, you know, quote unquote grifters in Minnesota, obviously, but people can get labeled that way. And that's truly and tragically sad. You know, as far as to tie this real quickly into the politics of this and the policy making, you know, apparently, I mean, now some of the details are coming out about the two individuals in Australia who had 6 licensed weapons, right? These weren't just something they got off a black market or smuggled in. And that's just part of the problem. You know, how do you effectively combat some of this through any kind of a regulatory or legislative framework? It's not as easy as it sounds, especially when Australia and others do have restrictions that we don't currently in the US, but they apparently in Australia's case were ineffective.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, then there's the Brown University killing, which just, you know, begins to just like, oh yeah, that's sort of the typical American killing, right? It's on a college campus. It's they have no suspect yet in custody. But what was odd to me about that, or notable among all of the horror, is that those kids who were affected by that shooting on the Brown campus are used to shooting drills. They're used to these drills that actually run through active shooter scenarios. In fact, one of the girls there, or women there, the students who was studying, she was a victim, if you will. I mean, again, she survived it, but she was a victim of a shooting at her high school. There were 2 high school shootings that girl lived through. I mean, this is America, where we have to sort of run through this stuff like it was just a fire drill.
Well, and there's one more recent incident that has been really shocking to people. I think this happened, Mark, while you were gone, but the Stockton, California shooting at the birthday party for the young child, where multiple people were killed, many more wounded, in what now appears to be a gang-related shooting, where, you know, they just stormed into a birthday party with 100 people and just started literally unloading. And one of the challenges there has been that because of the fear in those communities about gang violence, it's been exceptionally difficult to get anybody to turn people in, to have any kind of state's evidence brought, to say, do you know any of these individuals? People are just mum because they're fearful of the consequences. So as you know, Mark, there's sometimes a lot of different antecedents to these various things. All of them are worthy to take note of and really have to be addressed continually in the public arena.
I'm going to follow up on the Somali thing with you here a little bit, just with also a view toward the demonization of certain communities or certain people. And I think that demonization has taken on, at least in its early stages, those who are here in undocumented capacity. And then there are different narratives. They're taking your jobs, they're taking your housing, they're taking your social programs, whatever it might be. I mean, most of it is not true, but the compartmentalized Somalis, Latinos, et cetera. And you know, of course, we've had the Arab community affected here in this country. We've had the Asian community affected in this country. I'm wondering how that's playing, and this gets to you, and this is why I'm asking you, politically. Because we, even for example, in Southern California, know that the Latino community isn't particularly an encumbrance, that they do a lot of things and are a vital part of both the culture and the economy. I think that's true in the communities that have large Somali populations and Arab populations, et cetera. So I'm wondering how that's playing politically, because there's really an effort to demonize them, and yet I don't know that it's sticking.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you one thing I think you're seeing happen very rapidly, especially in Washington, and that is a lot of members of the GOP are saying, you know, listen, we don't buy any of this stuff, right? About like this group, that group. I think there's a real concerted effort to push back, you know, whatever verbiage is emanating from different political circles by, I'm just going to say it, the more responsible members of both parties who are just saying, you know, enough is enough of this garbage. You know, no, it's not every Somali. Certainly, no, it's not every Latino. You just go down the list, right? No, it's not every Black person, any more than it's any, you know, woman or man or whatever. And I think that, you know, the term that's been used, as you know, Mark, in the past, the so-called identity politics, where one aspect of politics, one branch of politics or another, either takes on and adopts sort of an identity group, right, or rejects them, you know, and seeing that as somehow politically advantageous. I sense that there's far more caution and even wariness and frankly disgust about that than I think there, at least that I've witnessed, inside places like the Beltway.
Well, that's encouraging, because it strikes me as, just personally, as a colossal, well, it's a colossal waste of money. I mean, this whole the Department of Homeland Security being supercharged, these ICE agents who are, in my view, just glorified thugs going into these neighborhoods and performing all of this. I mean, to me, that's it. But it's also insanely divisive and wasteful of whatever political capital could have been used in a positive way. And so there's a piece of video, isn't there, Tony? There's a video with Noam, I think, taking on. And I understand that this could be viewed as sort of political grandstanding on some level. This is kind of why I'm playing it for you. Tell me, does this stuff land, or is this or is this the stuff that you know, Democrats and the left just kind of run in their silo, and in the GOP right silo, it just never gets the light of day? Go ahead, Tony. This is back and forth between Kristi Noem, and here she is on. That's her on a horse. Okay, waiting. Yeah, she does a lot of videos. By the way, you know, I just came back from out of the country, and you are inundated with Kristi Noem videos, as you know. You're inundated with the airport domestically. If you're flying or going anywhere, you're in. You know, they really do a lot of media, this administration. And by the way, maybe that's not a bad thing. Like, meaning, you know, maybe the Biden administration, the Democrats, they should have taken some victory laps, and they should have done some media as well. And if they weren't doing it very effectively, because I didn't see any of it. Do you have it or not? No?
Okay. Hey,
No?
Mark,
Okay. Yeah.
on that point, I think you've hit on something that is distinctly different and having nothing to do with policy, but just politics. The Trump administration could not be more different. And this is widely understood inside Washington. They found a way in 2024 to jump on social media, to jump on podcasting, right? Streaming, and now to jump on accessibility. I mean, Trump does basically Q&A sometimes multiple times a day, right? He'll just be randomly doing some signing, or even at a ceremony of some kind, or sitting at the, you know, the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, and here the Q&A just starts up, you know, and that is something that I do think Democrats said, we learned the hard way, that sequestering your leaders and trying to just put a lid on things that coming out of the White House, that doesn't work anymore in the age of modern media. Yeah,
that's exactly right. I mean, Trump, I think he's a mad king, but he is a mad king who's always looking for a microphone and is ready to say whatever. he gave himself, the A plus 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 for the economy. Again, I don't know how much of that gets down to Joe's six pack, but I know Joe is paying more for that six pack than he used to have to pay, and the tariffs are clearly something that are affecting Americans as we move in through the holiday season. Is that beginning to carry a political weight?
Oh yeah. I was gonna say that next, Mark, that based on what you're talking about previously, the two big animating issues last year in 2024, there's no secret, Democrats and Republicans now agree on this. It was rising costs and immigration, right? I mean, those were the two big animating issues that Biden and then Harris got really stuck on and really never seemed to come up with good descriptions because they had really bad numbers, right? When it came to border issues and immigration, and when it came to the economy and inflation, they just couldn't get away from that. And some say that was inexorable. Others say they did a horrible job of messaging it, right? But for right now, this is what I'm reading, the political tea leaves that going into the midterms, which now, crazily, Mark, are now less than 11 months away, a little over 10 and a half months away. And that is the immigration balloon. A lot of air has gone out of that balloon. I mean, the ICE raids have kind of taken a lot of the, the headlines. They've gotten a lot of the quote unquote bad guys out in their view, but it's not the animating issue that now the gigantic billboard issue is now, starting with yes, it's affordability. And there is Republican angst about the fact that if they don't have a good story to tell 6 months from now, it's going to make the midterms tough. And Democrats are starting to catch on to this. Trump did his first, you just cited it right now, his first foray out into the hinterlands about that in Pennsylvania, talking about it. But even after that, his own people in the Republican Party saying, look, you can't just fake this thing. You can't say everything's wonderful and affordability is a hoax. A lot of people tried to do that and they learned the hard way. And that was where the Clintonian message of it's economy stupid came to fore and has been resonant since.
I remember seeing a Maduro rally, and there was a shot of the crowd, and there are people starving, under Maduro. And he said, I can see you all, you're on the Maduro diet. He was kind of laughing about it. And it became this thing, the Maduro diet. There's just a scarcity and people aren't eating as much, et cetera. And I thought of that as Trump just sort of began to play off the affordability crisis. All I hear about is affordability. It's a Democratic hoax. And so what you're saying is, no, you can say that all you want as president, but on some level, you're owning it. And there'll be a political price paid, not even by Trump, but by his party, is what I'm hearing from you.
Well, it's going to be both, because
both.
The midterms next year, if those things are a disaster, de facto, they're a disaster for Trump. I mean, we've talked about this, Mark, and we'll be talking about this a lot in the next 10 months. Make no mistake about it. There is only one political game right now in town. And I don't mean that in a flippant way. There's only one political target right now that has any resonance for the next 3.5 years, and that is next year's midterms. Control of the House particularly is absolutely tenuous at best for Republicans, and that will have absolutely calamitous impacts on the second half of a Trump term. And they know it. The White House knows it. The Republicans know it. There's not a united front yet about messaging, obviously, because to your point, there's Republicans saying, no, you can't fake this one. When people go to the grocery store, when they go to the gas station, it's either better or worse. Now, apparently right now it looks like, and maybe this is just the winter slump in terms of gas prices. Gas prices have been coming down, right? Even in places like California. But, there's going to have to be sustained sense that things are getting better for the average person, or midterms are going to be rough waters for Republicans.
Quickly, military conflict in Venezuela, that's really going to happen?
Well, it's going to happen in a limited way, I think, is what most people believe now, just like it is now. I mean, the saber rattling is increasing. A couple of F-18s flying off the coast last week, flybys by B-1s and others. The biggest ship in the world, i.e. the Gerald Ford aircraft carrier, USS Gerald Ford, off the coast. Reportedly 15% of our active duty fleet now in the Caribbean. I mean, this is for real. Nobody believes at this point, Mark, there's going to be American boots on the ground. I think there's absolutely zero appetite for that, less than zero amongst Republicans in Congress. But, Trump tipped his hand again over the weekend, along with the boats, yes, carrying drugs, supposedly, every one of these. Are there likely to be strategic strikes, even within sites in Venezuela? It's looking like that might be more likely. What would avoid that, Mark, is that leader leaving, right? That's the pressure points. That's what all this is pointing towards is, look, buddy, we're tightening these so-called political and policy and pragmatic noose. You're gone. It's just a matter of when and how.
Sure. All right, I'm out of time. Great to talk to you again. I guess I have one more visit with you before Christmas. So
that's right, buddy. We'll look forward to that next week with hopefully some better news to talk about.
That'll be great. Gary Dietrich, everybody. Thank you, Gary. Gary's segment sponsored by Bill Campbell at Remax Gold. If you are relocating into or from Northern California, a lot of Northern California listeners, you need a highly respected real estate professional like Bill Campbell to help you out. Remax Gold is where you can find Bill Campbell. Text him, call him, 530-448-7474, 530-448-7474. Bill Campbell, Remax Gold.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. I got to do the YouTube stuff where you have to smash the like button. It helps us in the world of YouTube, and it's a help to us in the algorithm. It's a YouTube thing. So thank you for hitting the thumbs up and for sharing and for subscribing and doing all that stuff. Again, this is all stuff that helps build the footprint of the show. I'm so excited. One of the good things that's happened this year is the addition of this person who I've mad respect for, brilliant journalist, author, and you can pick up her books, and many of you have written to me and said, I've purchased all her books after seeing the conversation with you, and we have links always to her books under all our conversations. The View from Flyover Country, Hiding in Plain Sight, followed that. They Knew, followed that, and then The Last American Road Trip is her most recent offering. How about it for the wonderful, brilliant Sarah Kendzior, everybody. What a weekend, Sarah Kendzior. I mean, you do a lot of reporting and research and exposing of the institutions, the corrupt institutions, media, government, law. And when I look at something like what happened in Australia and the anti-Semitism that seems to have shown up now in Southern California, shown up in Southern California with a Jewish home being raked by bullets. And when I see the crime not associated with anti-Semitism, but just the run-of-the-mill American violence on the Brown University campus, I just think of the flaw that is baked into this culture that apparently extends beyond our shores. When I see it in Australia, they have pretty strict gun laws, and these guys had legal weapons, and they opened fire on this crowd of those celebrating the first night of their holiday. Help me with this. I know that there's a lot here, but I just would love your thoughts.
I mean, it's horrible. A lot of it, I didn't pay attention to in great detail, in part because a lot of these stories tend to be very inaccurate when they're first reported, and I wait for later details that happened in the Brown case at Brown University. They arrested the wrong person, let them go. It's also just, it's soul crushing to witness. It's senseless, it's cruel, it's awful. I feel for the victims. When I was looking at the Brown case, I kept thinking about how these two kids who were killed, these 18-year-olds, are the same age as the children from Sandy Hook all the way back in 2012. That would have been the same kindergarten class. And so they have spent their entire lives growing up in this world and having it culminate in this. There were also victims. I think so, there was a victim from somebody who escaped Parkland and who was at Brown. So, they've had to grow up in this kind of environment. And that's also, it's the same age as my daughter. And I remember when she was in kindergarten, when Sandy Hook happened. So I was thinking about that in a personal way in terms of Australia. The only sort of relief is that at least they tend to take their gun massacres much more seriously and actually do something about them. Other than, in contrast to us in the United States, where this just happens time and time again. So hopefully, there will be swift action in a way to prevent this from recurring. But it was just, it's emotional overload. I don't think that we as human beings are sort of meant to absorb this level of tragedy in such a cruel and impersonal way, through social media, with people making callous remarks, making anti-Semitic remarks, making anti-Muslim remarks, and of course there's a mix of victims and of heroes, involved in all of these events that should show our collective humanity and our collective grief. But it's often, unfortunately, not displayed that way.
Yeah, the Sandy Hook tie-in I hadn't thought of. That's really incredible. You're right. I mean, that these kids are now of college age, and I made this point repeatedly on the show at the time and made it again, and that is, when there was no gun legislation offered after Sandy Hook, I knew that this country would never have it, because it couldn't be more intense. The images, the idea that you could slaughter all of these kids in an elementary school and do nothing, absolutely nothing. It was an extraordinary moment,
Yeah.
But that's the country we live in. And I think I was making the point before that I think we fetishize guns and we fetishize the military in this country. We wear camo, we do that. I mean, and again, I understand that I don't mean to be, the buzzkill here, but I'm speaking about the intense way in which we have seen these things fetishized. I'm speaking specifically of guns and military aggression. And I think on some level that does reflect the kind of America that we live in.
Yeah, I think that that's always been the case. I think that's been the case since the founding of this country, where we have it conceived in an amendment. Of course, the type of guns, the type of military equipment that's meant for an actual armed forces instead of a civilian, is not what any kind of founding father or other lawmaker envisioned when they were protecting gun rights. But, I think to some degree there's a desensitization of it in media, yes, but I think there's something deeper going on, which is just a general disregard for the sanctity of human life, because I think you see the same treatment of people, not just in gun laws or in gun violence, but in how people responded to COVID, how they respond to poverty, how they respond to climate change, how they respond to a lot of preventable crises. And I think, as I said before, the way people interact with each other on these social media platforms, where they'll say hurtful, callous things just to get, attention or to sort of stoke some sort of reaction. I think it kind of shocked people when people began behaving that way publicly online, 10, 15 years ago, saying this kind of things they would not really say in person. There's a whole generation that has grown up with that, really two generations that have grown up with that kind of discourse, just sort of casually hateful. And that frightens me, because in a lot of these mass shootings and stuff, you see a kind of copycat persona way of viewing the world, in which people are treated like objects in a video game. And I think there's way more to it than blaming, movies, video games, blah, blah, blah. I remember hearing that when I was a teenager during Columbine, and, thinking it was mostly BS. And I still kind of do, because you have to take many steps. Most people who are engaged in that are not actually going out and reenacting it. But we have created a culture in which that is rewarded, glamorized. And I do think that that's harmful.
Well, also, all over the world, they have video games, and they don't have the problem that we have in America. It's just, you can A, B it and see that it seems it seems so clear. Let me just pivot to something else if I can, Sarah, and that is this military flex that we're seeing in Venezuela. I wonder if you can give me a couple of minutes on that.
Yeah, I'm watching that with the ongoing horror that I'm watching all of the Trump foreign military engagements, because we're never going to have clarity, transparency, honesty about this. I think Congress has been remiss in getting to the bottom of why exactly we're going to war with Venezuela. There's a variety of reasons, some of which are economic, the endless search for fossil fuels and oil. There was also a proclamation, I believe, by Roger Stone, just flat out saying that the ultimate goal was to destabilize Latin America in order to retake Cuba. And this was something that he said a little while back, just kind of casually in the way that they admit these things. I think last time I was talking to you on this show, I brought up Elliot Abrams, kind of eternal warmonger, Elliot Abrams from Iran-Contra, who appears in administration after administration, also heavily involved in this Venezuela initiative. And you'll see a lot of op-eds about him. His role in stoking wars for unprovoked reasons, he was also an architect of the Iraq War under George W. Bush, was brought up by Ilhan Omar way back in 2019. And then, of course, now we're seeing all of these attacks on Ilhan Omar and her community, on her family, which I think is meant to delegitimize her, not just as a Black Somali representative, but as somebody who is a critic of Elliot Abrams, who everyone seems to kind of forget about in this. You see a lot of recurring players and a lot of old bad goals that really, as I said before, remind me of Iran-Contra, in which there's all these private arms dealing, finance dealing, quote unquote regime change done for the most, mercenary sort of reasons.
Yeah, I'm with this crew, but I think what you revealed in your writings is that you can do it with every crew, looking for the transaction, looking for the money, looking for the interests that are served that have nothing to do with the narrative that's being laid out.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure what the narrative is. That's the interesting thing, is that I used to go and break down the narratives for these various administrations, with Iraq, with, the endless rotation with wars in Iran. Here it is so incoherent. You hear different things from different people. I don't quite know what, because they're not trying to cover up as much. That's the problem. They're more just flaunting their impunity. They're changing sort of, I think, public perception of what the military is to be used for, because as we're seeing this ramped up aggression abroad, we're also seeing ramped up aggression towards Americans and towards green card holders and towards people going through the immigration process, and this kind of normalization of, military troops, ICE soldiers and so forth, people just patrolling the streets, grabbing you, throwing you in a van, all of these kind of hallmarks of a dictatorial regime. And then Congress just kind of, twiddling its thumbs, being like, gosh, should we impeach him? Is there an impeachable offense? Where it's like, yes, obviously, like from, he commits like one a day, but they're as inactive about that as they were in 2019. Like sometimes they feel like I'm watching a rerun. I mean, honestly, it's like watching a sequel. Like before, when you were talking about gun violence and the glamorization of it, I kept thinking of Die Hard, which, I love. Like I love the original Die Hard. But as you keep watching the Die Hards, just like with any series, they get worse and worse. And I feel like we're kind of like on, the like 20th iteration of this regime, where it's just, pure hackery on one part, but also just sort of dangerously bad, and you're not even seeing people trying to enforce any kind of accountability. They're going through the motions of pretending to care, but I think if they truly cared, they wouldn't have allowed him to run for office again to begin with, after committing sedition, high crimes and misdemeanors, and a variety of other offenses the first time around.
That was the whole thing. I mean, just incredible. I mean, you've allowed this Frankensteinian monster, the creation of, the capitalist elite, this guy who's politically charismatic, who's informed by intense bigotry, and racism. You've allowed him to survive, and so now we endure it. There are moments in your writings where you actually do point to in addition to deconstructing these things, how activism and how we still sort of have to stay in the fight, and I think there is a quality of this now which is associated with, I always use this phrase, so sorry for to my audience who always hear me say it, but how do you put Humpty Dumpty back together again? It feels very all lost, but the reality is you have to try to put together what pieces you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, we're getting hit on so many sides. And, what I've emphasized, and I said this in an essay I published, now it's been nearly a decade. I think it was called We're Heading into Dark Times. It was right after when Trump was first elected, how you have to hold on to your moral core, how you should write down now, what your values are, what you stand for, what lines you will not cross, because you're going to be pressured to cross them and you're going to gradually absorb what's happening and possibly normalize it. I think in the last year in particular, we have had this onslaught of AI and of technology that basically encourages you to abandon what is good and human inside you. It's a spiritual attack. It's attack on your soul. And so that last place of refuge, where your conscience is, where your imagination is, the place that, dictatorships throughout history have never been able to permeate, is now under attack through the devices that we are forced to carry in order to live a life in America, through our phones, through our computers, through this technological dependence. And so that's something, to kind of struggle with and consider, because I do think they're trying to shape us inside. It's not enough for them to try to shape our economy, strip us of our rights, strip us of our laws, make everything, things we need like healthcare unaffordable. They want to control our thoughts as well. This is why Trump has his, list of, Antifa and other fictitious threats. It's why he's, making lists of, bad journalists and bad citizens on very spurious, very vague ground. I'm worried for 2026 that that's the direction that they're going to be going, and that they're going to use technology, digital technology, in order to achieve this agenda.
Speak to what you were just saying about the dependence on AI leading to sort of a giving up of ourselves in a sense. Can you just give me another beat on that?
Yeah, I mean, well, you can just say screw AI. Like, that's what I do. Like, I don't use it at all. I'm completely against it, and I'm not a strict parent, but it's the one thing I will not let my kids use. Do not go to like a chat GPT for life advice. Like, you don't need that. What unfortunately often we are dependent on is just cell phones for basic communication. As a writer, I need to use platforms that are owned by oligarchs that I don't like. I have to promote my work on those platforms. We're kind of on one right now with YouTube, but keep hitting that like button. They've pushed us in this terrible situation, where we constantly have to kind of beg for applause within the confines of creations owned by absolutely horrible people. So the struggle is to, within that, try to retain your integrity. And so I do that as much as I can. Some of it is just security things, like not using QR codes, apps, like basically using the internet as if I'm running a blog from 2006. There's only so much a person can do. A lot of it is just not letting it bend and break you, but also not being intellectually lazy. Continue to read books, explore the world, consume analog, but not consume, enjoy analog art and culture, and don't let all of this outside pressure, this algorithmic pressure, shape what you see and what you experience. They're trying to push you in different directions. So do what you can and not be pushed, and live your life like you're thwarting that algorithm. Just push back at it and don't let it try to shape who you are inside.
The thing I've noticed about ChatGPT is that it's wrong a lot. That I mean, when I say a lot, I mean,
So wrong.
Yeah.
It has me labeled as a killer for one thing, because on Blue Sky I quoted Folsom Prison Blues, Johnny Cash, and I got suspended for the making reference to the Reno line. I shot a man in Reno, just watch him die. There's another quote for me out there where I was on book tour and I was telling the person interviewing me, I am so sick of COVID, as in I am so sick of COVID dominating our life and us talking about it. ChatGPT says that I was deathly ill. I've actually never gotten COVID, but that I nearly died. There's this whole fake version of me, this like digital doppelganger, and it spits out fake quotes. Those fake quotes end up in these AI slop articles. Those get amplified by real articles. So, I encourage people to look for primary sources. Don't look for out of context text. These LLMs are an absolute nightmare. There's a fake biography of me that was written by a robot. I can't believe that this is my life. I honest to God look at this and I'm like, on top of everything, I have to battle robots. What the hell? It's like every dystopian movie that I watched as a child is now just, colliding into my daily living. And honestly, it's a drag. I've been alive in the 21st century longer than the 20th, and I really don't like it. So.
Yeah, no, it's been a rough year across the board, and the rise of ChatGPT, and that's just one of them, of course. There are all these different AI models, and they're super powerful. I mean, they are, and I think you hit on it, because the LLM part is really what separates them. I mean, you can Google search or internet search any number of things, but when the machine speaks to you as though you're, with the, wow, Mark, that's a really good question. Let me find some stuff. It's like, oh, wow, man, this is like a different experience than just typing it in. So that's a way, it's such a devious way, I guess might be the way I'd put it, to make it into my life as sort of a real thing when it's actually just not.
Yeah, and I think it's especially bad for folks who are lonely and for young people, people who don't necessarily realize how abnormal this is. I think of teenagers, looking for answers for questions that they might not want to ask their parents. And, there's also been numerous examples of young people, turning to these chatbots and being coerced into suicide, into self-harm, into all these awful behaviors. And it's tragic. I think it speaks to a broader problem of loneliness that you just can't completely blame on technology. But, if there is any other product that, first of all, all this is getting shoved down our throat. I haven't seen a lot of people asking for it. This is not like the kind of excitement that was created when the iPhone debuted. This is something that is involuntarily, it's being forced upon us. But, usually when there's a product out there that's so defective, it has, resulted in multiple deaths. It gets pulled from the market. In this case, because so much is wrapped up in this AI bubble, there has been no recourse. Very little has been done to help the victims of this. And I think that that's a really terrible sign, again, of the devaluing of the sanctity of human life.
Well, the idea that there be AI regulation of any kind in various states has now been completely undermined by the Trump administration. They have removed the ability of states. He's done it through executive order, and we'll see how it goes. I'm sure it'll be challenged in court. He's removing the power of the states to control AI in any way.
And that's a super interesting thing for me, because this is not coming from Trump. Trump is an old school gangster. He's a mafioso. He doesn't write anything down. He doesn't even take notes, really on paper. This is somebody who never leaves a trace. He is the last person who would use AI and pour out his thoughts into it. So this is coming from these backers. This is coming from people like Peter Thiel and, JD Vance, who is, standing in there for him. People like Jared Kushner, a lot of people who are wrapped up in Silicon Valley and this techno-fascist view of the world. Trump is just their bulldozer. It's just their way in, but it's an incredibly harmful view of humanity. And the fact that they're trying to rush these laws, I think that's because they know that, Trump may not be here for the long run, just purely due to age. I mean, he's almost 80 years old. That's sort of a logical conclusion. I'm not speaking of any kind of specific illness or anything like that, but they're trying to rush this in and lock it down as quickly as they can. And I just hope that if somebody else comes in, they approach these executive orders the exact same way Trump did, by just simply throwing out everything that the prior president did, starting over, slashing and burning, because these are all horrible, horrible, executive orders that he's putting into place.
You know, I don't mean to skip ahead too far in the movie, but I am very concerned about this crew. They've populated every aspect and institution in Washington, of the federal government, of their giving up power ever. You know, again, I don't mean to skip too far ahead, but I really, you made me think of it when you talk about the election, and I just was thinking, gosh, you know, I feel like the midterms, because they are going on at the state level, they might be able to, there may be a legitimacy and a way in which they can actually be conducted, and we can get to the finish line on those. But I feel like it's a general election. I don't see any way these guys are giving up power. They are literally making up. The Justice Department is making up stuff and producing, as you know, these slipshod sort of lawsuits, and they are building enemies list, as you were noting before. I mean, this is the stuff of an autocracy that's not going away easily just based on a vote.
Oh, yeah. You can't vote out the mafia, and this is a mafia state, and that's what they always intended it to be. That's what they intended it to be in 2016. It's what they intended it to be during, Biden's entire term, which they spent waiting for Trump's reinstallation, which was made incredibly obvious. I think it was around May 2021 that I said Trump was coming back, because it's very clear. It's like, if you're not going to punish anybody for sedition, for attempting a coup, it is because you want that coup to succeed, or because that coup on some level already has succeeded. And there are, overt signs of this, like when Trump was able to pack the Supreme Court to his liking, and that court is able to grant him permanent immunity and grant whoever they want permanent immunity. That is not a, quote, real court. That is a court that is merely a group of people acting in the service of an autocrat. And the same is true of lower level courts. And of course, they're not going to leave. Like, I don't know what universe all of these timid Democrats and others who have refused to fight back for the last 8 years come from. Like, I don't know what kind of history they're reading, because the thing is once an autocrat gets in, you've got to move fast. You got to shut this thing down early, or it just gets its tentacles in and it rips everything apart. And then, every now and again, you get this illusion of normalcy that I think people very badly wanted to believe in during the Biden years. They certainly didn't want to listen to me when I said that it was merely that, an illusion, and that the far right wing, these aspiring autocrats, were waiting in the wings and also shifting American political culture very hard to the right and normalizing a lot of things that people previously found abhorrent. Instead, they let it slide. They talked about reaching across the aisle while simultaneously calling the Republicans fascists. And so I think there was this kind of, confusion among the American people about, well, how dangerous are they? If they're so dangerous, then why are they not being indicted? Why are they not being held accountable? Which is a completely legitimate question. And unfortunately, led a lot of people to believe they can't possibly be that dangerous, or certainly Biden, Garland, others would intervene. And they did not. They dug their own graves, and they dug America's graves much more so, because honestly, I think, these big shots, they're going to slip right through. They're not the real targets. It's like the old George Carlin quote about the big club, that we're not in it. Like you and I, we're not in it. I have a feeling that, Hunter Biden or James Comey or whoever they're pointing the finger at now, they're going to be, just fine with their millions of dollars and their fancy legal teams and whatever. It's the rest of us. It's regular folks who speak out, who protest. It's people who are just living their lives, but they happen to be, immigrants or students protesting on behalf of Gaza or whatever the target is of the day. They are the ones who will be targeted. And it is so unjust. It is so unfair. And a lot of it was preventable. But I think, the path is always just clarity. The path is retracing that history and making sure we know it, because I think that's the other thing that happened during the Biden years, is a lot of publications put up paywalls files or they deleted their archives, and it left people with a very faulty memory of what Trump's first term was like and how bad it actually was and how similar it is to the one happening now, where it's just sort of on, hyperspeed, but it's a lot of the same initiatives and a lot of the same plans, and folks shouldn't have been that surprised. Dismayed, but not surprised.
The dry cleaning of recent history goes alongside this dry cleaning of history that they're doing. You write so beautifully in your books about sort of a historical context to so much, and I just see how they're just they're taking an eraser to all of this now, and you make a good point, especially I think as the media is going to be increasingly controlled by right-wing entities. I see the Ellison Group rising with Saudi money, et cetera. The Warner Brothers deal is huge for the death of CNN, and I'm sure you can look at CNN and go, well, it's a sort of a tepid offering to begin with. Yeah, well, you'll be longing for that tepid offering soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that they also understand, and Trump understands this very well, that, the infotainment complex, the kind of, news that just runs around the clock and beguiles you with scandal, is their way in and is something that they need to control. It was something that was somewhat of an obstacle for them in the first term. I mean, honestly, I think they should have been exposing all of these crimes. For example, the Epstein information was all out there all the way back in, 2015 when Trump first proclaimed his run. That could have been covered then. They did not do it, but it still prevented, it still created some kind of, an oppositional force. They are buying all those networks. They are merging them. They are controlling them. They are limiting who gets on them, limiting the content. And that is, that is intentional. And that does bode extremely poorly for the year to come.
Yeah. Find Sarah's, what does this say? Sarah is, I'm sorry, I can't read because my screen is so small.
They say, am I suggesting that the wealthy are depopulating the world so they can conserve resources for themselves? I.e. Robert Kennedy. Yes, that is exactly what they are doing, these oligarchs and plutocrats. And it's not limited to Kennedy.
All right, we're out of time, but you can find you can find, what did you say? Find Sarah's Substack. There's a link to it under this video, and you can find her books. That's her latest, The Last American Road Trip. Sarah Kendzior's books are treasures. Really get into them. And I will tell you that there are links to all of them under this video as well. So grateful for you. Thanks for spending time with us. And I look forward to next week. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Sarah Kendzior, everybody. Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This is Mark Thompson.
Thank you for being here, everyone. Great to be back, and very excited to jump into some chats a little bit later. But I've got, I've got a very special guest. And here's what's funny. I thought I was an early adopter to the Oyer lawyer space. Kim, I thought I was kind of like on it early. You always feel like, hey, I'm excited. I've discovered someone who breaks down the law really well and who was in the belly of the beast. That's Liz Oyer. Then I see that the world's kind of discovered Liz Oyer. And then, a few months later, she's on 60 Minutes, and she's a huge star.
Yeah. Well, because she's amazing.
Yeah. But I feel like, I guess what I'm saying is that, my special discovery wasn't so special after all. But,
and then you have a president that, seems to be pardon after pardon after pardon of these wild pardons, and so her expertise on this matter becomes really important.
Yeah, she is she's the most popular person at the dance for sure. She is the brilliant pardon attorney, former pardon attorney for the U.S. government, and actually her story is really extraordinary because it involves a Hollywood celebrity. Mel Gibson wanted a firearm, and for him to get a firearm, because he had a conviction, a domestic violence conviction, they had to go through Liz Oyer's office. And Liz said, well, we can't give it to him because, he's got this conviction. We just have there's a rule against it. And it's explained, no, but he's a friend of Donald Trump. And for that reason, he's got to get it. And she wasn't good with that. And I'm sure that was, now that looks like, one of the more quaint things she would have been asked to do as a pardon attorney. But that led to her leaving government. How about it for Liz Oyer, everyone? Hi, Liz.
Hi, thanks for having me back, Mark.
Great to have. You know what? I have Liz Oyer glasses too. Where am I? You got the best set of glasses. You got different glasses, and these aren't them. Where are my credibility glasses? I have these that are sort of like they're a not that a little bit better maybe, but I have really great dark ones. They're my Liz Oyer glasses, but I don't. I thought I had them and I don't have them handy. Anyway,
You know, I actually get a lot of comments on my glasses on my social media posts, and they're very polarizing. Some people love them and some people hate them.
I love them. I think that's a great thing you have. Oh my God, please never. I know sometimes you wear them, sometimes you don't, but I love that you have them because you clearly have so many different kinds, and it's really, really cool. Wow, you're someone with a really special perspective on what's happening at the Justice Department. You were the pardon attorney there who did so much work reviewing pardons that now are being doled out, it seems, with utter caprice. There is just this impulsive aspect to Donald Trump's pardons, but there's also, it seems, an agenda-driven aspect to Donald Trump's pardons. I wonder if you could help navigate what's going on there at the Justice Department and indeed who replaced you. I think that's part of this story as well.
Sure. Yeah. So for people who aren't in the weeds of this, like I have been for many years, it's important to kind of set the stage. So there is an ordinary process for processing applications for presidential pardons that works through the Justice Department. And this process looks at the merits of the applicants. It's a very careful, deliberate review of people who are seeking this type of relief. The idea is that the Justice Department will make recommendations to the president before he decides what to do with his clemency power to ensure that he is using that tremendous power in the interests of justice. That was my job as pardon attorney, was to independently vet and review these applications and make recommendations to the president that were not partisan or political, but rather were based on the merits of the applicants. That whole process has completely broken down. It started on day one of this administration when the president pardoned all of the January 6 rioters without consulting the pardon attorney. And it proceeded in that manner throughout the time I was there and really up until now. During the 7 weeks before I was fired under the Trump administration, I was not consulted once about a decision about what were my views on a pardon that was being requested. Instead, the decisions were being made out of the White House without any consultation. Since I have been fired, it's gotten even worse. The position of pardon attorney has been filled by a guy named Ed Martin, who is an extreme partisan operative. He was present in Washington, D.C. on January 6th during the Capitol insurrection, and he likened that day to Mardi Gras in Washington, D.C. He has since been a huge supporter of using the pardon power to bail MAGA supporters out of any trouble that they might get in. He has tweeted numerous times the phrase "no MAGA left behind" in connection with his views about the use of the pardon power. And he's now the one advising the president on these consequential issues. And under his leadership, we have seen some really terrible pardons granted that just degrade the justice system and undercut what it is supposed to stand for in so many different ways.
Yeah, it seems as though that first tranche of pardons associated with January 6th was all an effort to rewrite the history of January 6th. It was an insult to all of us who saw what was going on. And it's been followed by things that have also been an insult to anyone looking at the facts. I mean, most recently, first of all, it's a parade of white-collar crooks. And when I say white collar, I'm talking about people who've defrauded for tens of millions of dollars. Everything from that, the fake truck company that was supposed, we did that story on the show when it happened years ago, to the dark web guys who are getting their walking papers, and they're completely walk free. Not to mention, as you've pointed out, and I just love your stuff. There'll be links to all of your stuff, the Substack and Instagram, etc., under this video. But I love that you point out that all the fines are then completely washed away. So these people not only walk free, but they have no encumbrance associated with what they did.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So these are not small frauds. The white collar crimes that we're talking about that are being forgiven, they're really massive ones on a huge scale. Very recently, the president pardoned a guy who was running essentially a Ponzi scheme. He lied to his investors about returns they could expect to get. And he got over $1.6 billion in investments from small time investors, people who were investing their retirement savings under false pretenses. And this person just was granted a commutation of his sentence, so get out of jail early card, after serving only a couple of days in prison. And one effect of that commutation was to wipe out his obligation to repay his investors that money that he stole from them. People who invested with this person, his name is David Gentile, were absolutely shocked that the president would grant this type of relief. And he did it apparently without consulting any of the victims. And there were many thousands of victims. I think it was something like 17,000 people who lost money in this fraud. And they were angry. And there are prosecutors and law enforcement officers and investigators who had been working on this case for a decade who were very angry to see this whole result unraveled with literally the stroke of a pen for no apparent reason. It's never been explained to the public why the president decided to grant a commutation to this man, David Gentile. He's making these decisions in a very shockingly ad hoc and off the cuff way. We saw another pardon last week, and this was a full pardon of an individual that seemed to derive from a golf game. President Trump was golfing with Trey Gowdy, a former congressman, and Trey Gowdy took the opportunity on the golf course to pitch the case of his client who was seeking a presidential pardon. And 2 weeks later, Trump granted him a full pardon. And this was a case that had been indicted by Trump's own DOJ. This was a case involving a major construction project, a sports executive who had rigged the bidding process for a major sports stadium valued at hundreds of millions of dollars in Texas so that his company would win that huge contract. And he was being prosecuted by Trump's DOJ. And Donald Trump decided to undo the whole thing and dismiss the case effectively through a pardon because somebody asked him to over a game of golf.
That speaks to where we are and the idea, and I want to get to the pardoning of the former Honduran president in a moment, but the, as I say, parade of white-collar criminals who are gaining these pardons, it's extraordinary. It seems to really be transactional. There seems to be contributions made to various things associated with the Trump family or Trump himself, and then these pardons are issued. And these are the selling of pardons that I'm sure, as a pardon attorney, I remember when Clinton was taking a hard time for, he was taking a hard time for, what's his name, who there was a big contribution,
Mark Rich.
Thank you, Mark Rich.
Yep.
And it was scandalous. I mean, my God, it was front page news everywhere. I mean, again, that wouldn't even make the news in the Trump administration, the Mark Rich pardon.
Yeah, I mean, that almost seems quaint now. It's undoubtedly true that presidents throughout history have granted pardons that have been controversial. It's happened more than once, but those are usually outliers. For the most part, most presidents have used the clemency power kind of within the guidelines of the Justice Department in most cases. And there are some kind of common principles that guide these decisions. And the underlying principle is that the pardon power should be used in the public interest. It should be used for the public good. So to make our justice system fairer. There are people out there, Mark, and I have pored over their applications who deserve to be considered for this type of relief. People who have long ago served their sentences, paid back all of their debts to society, and lived an honorable life contributing to their communities. And they just want that stain of that old conviction erased from their record so that they can really move on with their life. And those people are all being overlooked. I mean, there are thousands of applications piled up now at the Justice Department. There's actually about 19,000, and they're being ignored in favor of the people who have the political connections or the money to get in through the front door, which is really just a disgrace, a disgraceful use of the pardon power.
It has to be, for a pardon attorney, just about the worst nightmare. I mean, you're completely powerless to do anything. That's the way you found yourself caught. gosh, I mean, I'm telling you guys what the law is on this, and you're just completely running over me on it. And also the complete unbridled corruption that is revealed in what is the total transactional way in which pardons are being doled out.
It is very hard to watch, Mark. I mean, my heart breaks for the families whose hopes are resting on this process and who have been waiting and waiting for their turn to be considered. There are many people whose only hope of this redemption, second chances through clemency. And my heart breaks for those people. Also for the victims of the crimes of these white collar perpetrators that are being commuted, the people who are being overlooked in the process, not even being consulted. For a victim of a crime who's gone through something traumatic like losing your retirement savings to a Ponzi scheme fraud, it is re-traumatizing to see that the president of the United States is officially bestowing forgiveness on that person who wronged you, and that you will not get that debt repaid to you that you're entitled to because the president has chosen to grant clemency. And this president isn't even bothering to explain to those crime victims why he's making these decisions. It seems clear that he's making the decisions because they serve him in some way. And that is a common thread running through Donald Trump's use of the clemency power, is that he is using it in ways that benefit him, either politically or personally or financially. And he's not thinking about the interests of the American people. He is putting his own personal interests first, which is really just quite a shocking way to approach a solemn presidential power like the pardon power.
I mean, there's not even sort of the patina of objectivity. I mean, it's utterly stunning, you know. As I said during the first Trump term, there's no sleight of hand to Donald Trump. But what he's doing now without sleight of hand is just extraordinary. And I kind of want to ask you a bigger question, but before I do, and it's about the Justice Department and it's about the future of the Justice Department, et cetera. But before I get to that, I just want to talk about, for a moment, spend a beat on this former president who was of Honduras, who was clearly a mobster. I mean, like, seems like a Scarface type character, although a far better pipeline of drugs pouring into this country that was pardoned by Trump. And I wonder if you can unpack that for us and give us your sense of how that worked and why that worked the way it did.
Sure. The prosecution of Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras, was a tremendous, major undertaking by the Justice Department. There were national security prosecutors and investigators and drug enforcement and counterterrorism prosecutors and investigators working on this investigation for over a decade. It spanned multiple presidential administrations. It was very complex because it involved gathering evidence from overseas, and it finally culminated in the conviction of the former president of Honduras in 2024. He was sentenced to 45 years in prison for essentially turning his country into a corrupt narco state. Drug traffickers were bribing him and essentially running the country, and he facilitated the shipment of over 500 tons of cocaine into the United States. That is billions and billions of doses of drugs into the United States. And all of a sudden, Donald Trump decided to grant him a full pardon, which is absolutely shocking. There is no drug trafficker anywhere close to that scale who has ever even seriously been considered for a presidential pardon in the past. And there is no other president in our history that would have entertained a request from a major high-level international drug trafficker like Juan Orlando Hernandez for a presidential pardon. So it was absolutely shocking. It was devastating to the prosecutors and investigators who poured their blood and sweat into this case. And it was devastating to the people of Honduras. I posted about this on social media and immediately got outreach from many Hondurans saying, we're very upset about this. We don't understand why the president would do this to our country, why Trump would do this to our country. This man ruined our country, corrupted it, made it one of the most dangerous places on earth. People were fleeing left and right because of what he did to our country. So why would Trump pardon him? And the other question that has been raised is, why would Trump pardon this person spokesperson while he is also at the same time literally blowing boats out of the water, supposedly to stop the flow of illegal drugs into the United States. It is totally unprincipled. It makes absolutely no sense, and he has never explained it. His White House spokesperson has said that he did it because it was a product of weaponization of justice under the Biden administration, but that's just false because this prosecution long predates the Biden administration, and in fact was going on during Trump's first term in office.
Yeah. I mean, that's really a great summary. It just goes against his expressed narrative, and it just doesn't square in all the ways that you talked about it. And I read the portion of the letter that was requesting clemency.
Yes,
and
the letter is unbelievable.
Your Excellency, he calls him Your Excellency. It's addressed to Your Excellency. And then he leads, though, Liz, and I'm just trying to, again, figure it. He leads with, I was a victim the same way you were a victim
exactly
of the Biden weaponized Justice Department. And I'm wondering, was that enough, really, to get this guy to skate? It's extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, Trump is a simple man at the end of the day, and he likes people in whom he can see something of himself. And I believe that he saw something of himself in Juan Orlando Hernandez, a president who was running his country as he saw fit in his own personal interests, and he ran the place into the ground. But Donald Trump appears to believe that that is the presidential prerogative, to run the country in the president's own interests as the president sees fit. And that was relatable to him. And he liked the flattery. He liked being called Your Excellency. He liked the fact that Roger Stone apparently brought him this letter, a Trump ally, and all of those simple little things. I mean, people know how to push Trump's buttons, and the buttons were pushed, and he decided to grant this pardon with seemingly very little, if any, deliberation and no consultation with the relevant experts who could have and would have tried very hard to talk him out of it.
That's the legislation or modification that I would love to, at minimum, see associated with these pardons or commutations, that you must have accompanying documents from a Liz Oyer or from a pardon attorney there at the Justice Department who can provide substantive support for whatever this pardon is. It is, for Trump, a dream that you just rub the genie bottle and the pardon is issued. It's absolutely perfect for Donald Trump, who wants no check on power.
Yeah, he's very impulsive, and he likes that literally all he has to do is sign a piece of paper and it's done. And he gains a lot of power and wealth and political currency by doing this. In fact, he doesn't actually have to grant the pardon to have that effect. He just dangles the possibility of a pardon. Everybody out there who's got a federal criminal case knows that Donald Trump has the power to pardon, and he frequently says that he does. He reminds people that he does. And so people are proactively trying to curry favor with the president in the hopes of getting a pardon. We've seen this in some very high profile cases, like the case of Diddy, the case of Ghislaine Maxwell. Trump is asked, are you going to pardon this person? And obviously he should say no. I mean, any president in their right mind, any president other than him would say, no, I'm not going to pardon that person. But he won't even rule it out. He says, well, I can, I'm allowed to, I haven't decided, but I could. And just by dangling the fact that he could, he is reminding people that he has this tremendous power, and he is amassing additional power and wealth by letting people know, even if he ultimately doesn't decide to grant them the relief.
You know, Liz, I would love to see this pardon power modified, as I say, at minimum. But
yeah,
I wonder if you agree with me. Yeah, I wonder if you agree with me. I'm getting to this because let's say the Democrats come back in. I think a lot of things have to happen. I have questions about the next election because of the way in which the essentially Trump mobsters, in my view, have populated all the seats of power in Washington. So they can do a lot to undercut the election. But let's put that to the side. Let's assume the Democrats do get back in. And a Democratic president now has the pardon power. There is almost no incentive, as I see it, for them to change the pardon power that would now be seated with a Democratic president. I guess I'm seeing no way in which politically they're incentivized to modify the pardon power.
Well, it's a difficult power to modify because it's in the Constitution, and the only way to really rein it in is through a constitutional amendment. And that is, it seems impossible right now, given that we have a Congress that could barely even pass a budget, let
Sure.
alone get to a situation where we could have a constitutional amendment. It seems unlikely, but you're right that even if it could be done, there are political considerations. I think that we are at a place where we should be able to get bipartisan agreement that this is a power that needs to be limited. And it's not just Trump who has used it in ways that are not consistent with the public interest at times. Trump has done it on a scale we've never seen before. He's done it far more corruptly and systematically than any other president. But we saw complaints on the right side about President Biden's uses of the pardon power. And some of those complaints are legitimate, I believe. I believe that Biden's decision to pardon his family members on the way out of office was a big mistake because it essentially sent the message that it is okay for the president to use the pardon power in the president's own personal interest without considering the bigger public interest issue. And it set the precedent for Donald Trump to use the pardon power in his personal interest. Now, what Trump is doing is much worse, much more corrupt, much bigger scale than what Biden did. But, you know, the criticisms of those end of term pardons that Biden granted, I believe are legitimate. And we should be able to get to bipartisan consensus that we need to rein in the abuse and misuse of this power. The way to do it, I think, simply is to require more transparency and accountability for the use of pardons. Right now, pardon applications are treated as confidential. They're not a part of the public record. So we can't see what people are saying to the president. And we don't necessarily even know when the president is making decisions about clemency. We also don't know what money is changing hands. There's been a lot of excellent reporting showing that some pardon hopefuls are paying millions of dollars to access the president through lawyers and lobbyists. And we don't know what all is going into these financial transactions around the pardon economy. That is an area where Congress should step in, and they should require transparencies and public disclosures so that we can vet these applications and grants of clemency for ourselves and hold the president accountable politically, even if we can't stop the pardons by constitutional amendment.
I love that plan because at least there is a trail of breadcrumbs to how we got to the pardon. That's I think that makes total sense. In my last minute or two with you, I want to ask you about the Justice Department as a whole because I'm really downcast about it. I think one of the defining features of America is our justice system, that there is at least the notion that I think in many cases is true, which is that you'll get a fair trial, that no one's above the law. And please don't misunderstand me. I understand if you have money, if you have access, these are all things that, give you a way to game the system. But boy, I look wistfully on the good old fashioned corrupt Justice Department because this new one is, it seems so destroyed. I mean, the list of enemies that the president has, that they are building a list of those people who are critical of the administration, that they're putting them in categories that legally, as you know, have great toxicity associated with terrorism. The minute you're on a terrorism trial, you're facing down some real federal time. And the way in which they're cobbling together cases against these lists, as I say, of journalists and activists, and I mean, it's a scary place we are in. I wonder if you can just give me a moment on that and how it might be that we could put it together again and clean the system of some of this stuff that's going on now.
That's a great question. So our institutional safeguards that we've relied on since the founding of our democratic republic are failing us right now. We're not seeing those checks and balances working the way that we've always assumed that they will. And there was a period of time when I was really despairing about that. But I want to leave your listeners with a little bit of an optimistic message going into a new year, which is that one thing I've been reminded of in the midst of all of this chaos and corruption of our justice system is that we, the citizens, citizens have more power than we sometimes remember. And we are seeing that in what is happening with the grand jury process. There is this process in place in which to seek an indictment and to bring charges against, political enemies of the president. The Justice Department actually has to go to a group of citizens called a grand jury, present them with evidence, and persuade them to vote to bring those charges. And we have seen case after case recently in this administration where grand jurors have said no, have said they're not having it. We saw that in the prosecution of Letitia James. Multiple grand juries have now rejected charges against her. We saw that in a case that was a big deal here in DC where I live, the sandwich thrower, the guy who threw a sandwich at an ICE agent. He was first not indicted by a grand jury with a felony. The grand jury rejected the felony charges. He was then charged with a misdemeanor and acquitted by a jury after trial, which is just, it almost never happens. It's an incredible embarrassment to this Justice Department. The data shows that a prosecutor is actually far more likely to walk into a grand jury and get struck by lightning than to walk out without an indictment. I mean, it almost never happens. And it's just become common in this administration because they cannot bully and bludgeon their way through the justice system. And those safeguards that we, the citizens, have power over are holding. And that is heartening to me to see that my fellow citizens are standing up for the rule of law and that we do have the power to push back against these excesses and abuses of the justice system.
Wow, I appreciate you leaving us with something hopeful. And I think there's some dark days ahead, but you do remind us that, all autocracies end. All fascism finds an end eventually. I don't know where we are in this movie, but I do think that's such a great reminder, and I really appreciate it. Love Oyer Lawyer says San Jose Lola. A lot of love for Liz Oyer.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Also, I'll just quickly mention that we'll have links to your Substack, which I'm a paid member of and a proud member of the Oyer Lawyer clan. And you can, I look at you're doing so much media. I'm sure you have more media stacked up today after this. But I mean, you are a truth teller, and I so appreciate you spending some time with us, Liz.
Thanks so much, Mark. I really enjoyed this discussion as always, and please have me back anytime.
Okay, I look forward to that. Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Liz Oyer,
Mark.
everybody. So long, Liz.
Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
Who's Mark Thompson?
The Mark Thompson Show.
She's great. She's really great. Could talk to her all day. Yeah. Wow. Where is the time gone? It's crazy. Pamela, are you kidding me? Pamela, what is that? Friendrice? Is that her last name? Pamela Friendrice.
Yeah.
I'm going with Friendrice because nobody's correcting me.
I like it.
And Pamela Friendrice gives us a $20 super sticker. Big shout out to you.
Big shout out.
Thank you. You're so cool, Pamela. Thank you. The holidays are here. Who is this guy and where the hell is Mo Kelly? Well, a big thanks to Mo Kelly, who really rocks the show, man. I got to tell you, Mo Kelly is so very smart. He's so very talented. I feel very lucky that he is able to fill in for me, and I'm really quite grateful to him. And I'm grateful to my audience for embracing him and giving him the grace that you give somebody who's new and just kind of getting it all together. And but he, he's such a pro. He just settles right in. So, but I really appreciate the support that the audience has given him. I just poured a hot cup of Coachella Valley Sumatra into my devil's food cake batter.
Yum.
And my house smells lovely as it's baking, says Ms. Organic. Bravo,
Nice.
Ms. Organic. Wow. I should mention I'm drinking the Coachella Valley coffee myself right now, and it is. I'm drinking the Holiday Blend, and I recommend the Holiday Blend to you. Grab it at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Use our discount code. The Holiday Blend is a great blend. There's also like a holiday gift package. There it is, the holiday gift set. And you can get that at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. But don't be like just regular people going to CoachellaValley.com. You can go to CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. You can get that holiday gift set, and you can get 10% off using the code MARKT at checkout. So what? I know. That's what you want to do. So thanks, everybody who supports our sponsors and our sponsor and that world. All right, so I have...
and we need more sponsors. So if you have a business, bring it in.
Yeah, we certainly do. You've got to find enterprising ways in the new year. Still wearing my Lawyer Oyer glasses. These are old school glasses. I used to wear these all the time. But I have even some that are more glasses forward. I'll find them. I think you've seen them once before, but I don't have them handy.
Next time we have her on, we need to ask her about that Tina Peters lady.
Oh, yeah. Give me the Tina Peters story. It's the...
She was the one who is in prison for cheating on the election.
Oh, right.
And Trump tried to pardon her, even though she was she was convicted of state crimes.
Yeah,
he has no jurisdiction over that, but he, somehow thinks that he has a...
Yeah. Absolutely. No, we'll definitely do that. I guess I dropped the ball asking.
No, there was so many. That. You know what the crazy thing is? There's so many wild pardons. How could you possibly cover them all?
Yeah, it just also, I kind of wanted to get her into some sort of general stuff too, because I feel there are questions about the pardon system that are going to linger. So, here, Kim wrote to me privately though, please ask about the Tina Peters story.
I'm like, come on, Mark.
But I don't read that stuff. Once I started the conversation, I don't read it. I'm sorry.
Sometimes I get lucky and you see it.
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of blew that, Tony. I'm sorry about that, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah. Well, we're at the end of the show, my friends. It's a 2-hour offering. I've got just a couple of minutes. Are there any headlines that we need to pay attention to, Kim? I'll go 5 minutes over, 6 or 7 minutes over. Start usually 6 or 7 minutes late. So,
well, I don't necessarily know if I need to do a full newscast, but I will say that you already talked about the son of Rob Reiner being under arrest now in this Australian mass shooting at the beach for Hanukkah. 15 people dead, 40 remain hospitalized. So new numbers on that. Another story that is of note is that the Trump administration has until Friday to release the Jeffrey Epstein files. So we'll all be watching for that. And today in California, there's a legal battle over the redistricting of our congressional map. Starting today, there's a big hearing in Los Angeles, and Republicans are trying to get a temporary restraining order to block this new map that favors Democrats. And also, very quickly, if you did want to go to the Olympics in the Los Angeles area, registration for the chance to buy tickets for all sports to the 2028 Summer Games opens January 14th. No. So in just a month or so, you're going to have to jump on your tickets, even though they're far away.
Tony, would you offer your place up to, there it is, LA 28 tickets go on sale in 2026. Would you offer your place up to some family that comes into town that wants a place to stay for the Olympics?
No.
Yeah, under no circumstances you could maybe.
I live kind of far away, I think, from any of the venues, so
yeah, it's more of a philosophical
I don't think I'm convenient.
Thing. Yeah, but let's say they started.
I just wonder if we're going to get a repeat of '84, where everyone just like left town.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah. There is a history in Los Angeles. There's a kind of ancient history now, but of people leaving town because it's already hell to get from here to there.
Oh, and that's why everyone said there was no traffic during the Olympics. That's why traffic reports started on the radio.
Is that right?
For the Olympics, yeah.
That's funny.
That's why traffic reports started, because they thought it was going to be absolute Armageddon.
That's really, really funny. I'm wearing a Happy Non-Denominational Holidays t-shirt. You cannot get this. This is an old school Mark Thompson Show t-shirt. That's why you should grab, if you like something, grab it off of getmarkmerch.com, because it may not be there in 6 months, once we discontinue something. We have the Born to Peacefully Protest shirts. We have the Born to Peacefully Protest mugs. We have the, Make Love, Not Fascism. We have those shirts. We also have mugs like that. And then there's a bunch of stuff that's really just fun. In fact, I'll wear maybe the cardigan tomorrow for my conversation with David K. Johnston. David K. Johnston and I got into a back and forth about a guest on our show, and I can't wait to share that with you tomorrow. I'm not going to tell you about it yet, but I'm going to be, I mean, you know me, I like to like fully, full transparency. So I'll tell you about exactly what happened.
Was he mad about the guest, or did he not like the guest?
No.
Or did he?
No. He wasn't. Well, he was mad about the guest, not that the guest was on the show, and not that the guest was a guest, and not even that the guest is who they are. It had nothing to do with our show per se. But I said, "Oh, I'm a huge fan. We've had that guest on our show, and I can't wait to have that guest back." Yeah. And he said, "Well, that guest got a lot of stuff wrong about this." And I thought, oh my God. And so now I'm into a back and forth with David K. Johnston. But I'll explain the circumstances a little bit more tomorrow. I love the merch, says Zero Sum. Thank you. And I guess we have to wrap up. You know, Tony, I don't want to wrap up. I'm one of those people who just never wants to wrap up.
Thanks, Tony.
But I gotta do stuff. You gotta do stuff. Kim's got her After Party Live. She does over on the After Party Live channel. We see some reports that Trump has taken a question about his Truth Social post on Reiner's death. And Trump doubled down on what he posted, indicating that Reiner was bad for the country. Wow. Isn't that nice? Thank you, Randy, for that. I didn't know that. That's but he's all class, that president of ours, all class. What a horrible, horrible thing. And that you could turn it into what he turned it into is crazy. Oyer is awesome. Thank you. Yeah, find her. There'll be links under her stuff, as there'll be links under Sarah as well. Thanks, everyone. Tomorrow, David K. Johnston. And now we leave you with...
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Kim. Until tomorrow.
All the time. Bye-bye.
All the time. Bye-bye.